Salutations, episode 77, and today we've got a new challenge build for you guys and a new editing style. So today I'm going to be doing a commentary over the video gameplay, and I zoom through the items, and I will get to the skill tree in a moment just simply because I forgot to do it while I was in the main room. I decided to record this while I was doing my testing run, so I'm cycling through items throughout this entire thing because I wasn't really anticipating on this being the final clip, but I have run out of time as it's 5 o'clock in the morning, so I am releasing this. Well, I am finishing my freaking runs and just getting through to recording the audio. This is mostly convenience, but I am curious on your guys' thoughts on it, how this style is different from my previous styles for challenge builds, and if you all enjoy this variant better, or if you enjoy the previous style better where I do everything impromptu during the run. The commentary is still very much impromptu. I'm just recording after the fact, so I get to watch my own gameplay while I'm recording instead of gaming during it. So I get a little bit more focus while I'm speaking. So today we are going over a DoT-based Amara build. Now, to some of you that may be keen observers of the Borderlands 3 meta, you may be wondering, why are you using Unleash the Dragon if you are not very much into meta gear? And why is this why are you running a DoT-based build for a challenge build? This should all be easy to use gear, right? Well, I received a comment, well, a reply in a comment chain on one of Hellfire's videos. Go check out Hellfire. It makes amazing content. And the basic synopsis of the comment was DoTs are useless because, well, DoTs are useless in that they tried to make them good because of synergies with skills and weapons, but it was really just the skills and weapons that made everything good. And then also made the statement, the Unleash the Dragon isn't even good anymore. And so I'm sort of showcasing the Unleash the Dragon stuff here. I do it all at the end when it comes to the Unleash the Dragon. I showcase that really well when I'm fighting Wotan. But I'm using it in a very unique way for a challenge build here. So the challenging part that I added to this was I am using the Hellfire SMG to trigger most of my damage sources. And if I'm not using that, I am going to be using the Guardian Angel to proc most of the other stuff. And then there are some heavyweight style enemies that I kind of have to just rely on either Unleash the Dragon or a melee variant to deal with, just simply because fire, there are enemies that are immune to fire. There are enemies that while you have the shock or corrosive attunement, they are immune to Unleash the Dragon. Why that's a thing, I don't know, but that is a thing. The basic mechanic that's happening here is there is an anointment of 500% elemental crit hits, for like elemental critical hits cause a 500% bonus damage nova of that element, which is a amazing anointment. I use it to nuke Kraken there. Kraken got hit by Unleash the Dragon DoT. It wasn't doing too much. Every 3 ticks, it was dealing a decent amount of damage, but the moment I shot it with the Hellfire SMG, he kind of just disappeared. He just blew up. And that is a very strong mechanic. So what's happening is when you shoot the target, that also applies the elemental crit hits. It doesn't have to be the DoT applying it. And that elemental critical hit takes all of the damage of that element DoT and adds it all together and blows it up in that 500% explosion, which is nuts. It is absolutely insane how much damage you can get out of that. I do showcase the Unleash the Dragon here a little bit against the Valks. It's Not a good showcase because it took longer than 1 second to kill them with just the Unleash the Dragon, but it kind of did solo that section. Now, he talks about how the Unleash the Dragon isn't good anymore, and I can't see that. I really can't. I mean, do you guys think the Unleash the Dragon isn't good anymore based off of the showcased footage so far? Again, it does get better when we get to the end. Now, something else that's interesting to me is the fact that the Hellfire SMG works really well at proccing this. When there is a fire dot on an enemy, as long as I land a critical hit, I'm gonna get that Fire Nova to apply, which is a lot of damage, and the SMG fires pretty fast, and its own dot is strong enough to sustain itself. You could just hold down the Hellfire SMG's dot and rely just on that. You don't need the Unleash the Dragon dot to stack it. And they count as 2 separate stacks of fire damage, and they do add together for the total damage. So you hit with that Unleash the Dragon, you get the Hellfire to apply the Hellfire fire dot, and now you have 2 different fire dot sources that are amping that 500% critical hit. It is a really fun gameplay loop and mechanic. I had so much fun playing around with this and testing and figuring out how this stuff worked. I loved it. It was so much fun. I did choose a action skill that I don't usually use in challenge builds. I went Phase Cast. Now, I went this specific orientation of Phase Cast because it spawns 3 elemental orbs after every enemy that it pierces. So every enemy that it hits. And though each of those elemental orbs have a chance of landing a crit, doing some crazy damage with all of the other fire dots they're applying, or if it just happens to apply a dot of the elemental type that I'm looking for. So for example, right here, if I switch to Guardian Angel, I blow him up. Yep, he just blew up because the shock dot from the action skill was strong enough to blow him up with the 500% elemental crit hits annoying. There's a lot of people who are like, Dot's not good in Borderlands 3 and whatnot, and I'm just like, Dot is one of the most powerful mechanics in the game right now. Is it well designed? That's debatable at best, but is it weak? No, not at all. I would argue, again, one of the strongest mechanics in the game right now. Unleash the Dragon could be used to destroy just about every, if not every, boss in the game with relatively no skill tree and no builds, no nothing. As long as you have a Psycho Stabber with a Fish Slap, then the Unleash the Dragon will do everything by itself. You could take out the Psycho Stabber and run Unleash the Dragon with a Fish Slap and a skill tree on Amara, and you can solo M10, M11, Emo, and Vermi, which I do have a video going over. I did that video to help out a lot of people during the last Borderlands 3 hunt, to showcase, hey, this is a really easy mechanic that you can use to kill Hemo and Vermi, because I know there were a lot of people who were stuck on those 2 Varkids. So that was the intent of that video. And that one does a pretty good job of showcasing, hey, the Unleash the Dragon's actually freaking strong. Don't sleep on it. Now, for some of the interactions here, I heavily relied upon the Unleash the Dragon in this particular run, but I did do some elemental projector runs prior to this. As long as you freeze the enemy and you have yourself dotted with fire, the Hellfire was shredding things. You would get the dot to apply to the enemy, and then you would land that crit after the dot was applied from the Hellfire, and it would just kill the enemy, and it was great. Now, Did it work against bosses? No, not really. It worked against red health bosses, but only if I had the fire augment on. If I didn't have the fire augment on, then it was kind of rough. It didn't, well, I say kind of rough. It was just, instead of one tap, it was a couple shots. But it was still a little bit more difficult than what I was doing here. Look at this freaking Frost Heavyweight, just not wanting to die. So this little bit here was kind of annoying, because when you get a fire immune enemy and your whole shtick right now is just using fire, it does get quite annoying to try and deal with. But I did really well fighting this one dude, just dodging all of his projectiles, waiting for the cooldown and stuff. You know, I find it interesting that out of all the weapons that I was using for this, I had the Lyuda, the Krakatoa, a couple other like high dot based elemental weapons that were fire to pair with the Unleashed Dragon. And the one that did the most work out of all of them was the Hellfire SMG. I mean, like, sure, the Krakatoa would deal more damage when you didn't have dots, or when it was doing its own dot by itself. But when you paired any other form of dot with the Hellfire versus the Krakatoa, the Hellfire would out DPS the Krakatoa, and it was crazy. I didn't showcase all of them in this run because this one was specifically for testing out the Hellfire with this mechanic, and it was doing really well. So there's also another thing. You don't need to just apply the fire to get that fire explosion. You can have other elements apply to that projectile, and they will also apply their own novas. So with this, I went over to Shock here, and while I had Shock on, I was getting not only fire novas, but I was also getting shock novas when I would shoot my Hellfire, because I have Forceful Expression, which was giving me a percentage damage bonus of my attuned element. So I'm getting shock and fire novas, depending on which one was doing more or helping the most at that point. Honestly, there wasn't very much of a use for that with this particular setup. At least at this point. I do have an idea to run this specific weapon through Wotan with a corrosive attunement. But the issue with running Wotan is you have to do the dot damage to kill the other two phases, because he doesn't have a crit spot after that first crit spot is broken. So it makes it really difficult to apply the critical hit anointment to him if he doesn't have a crit spot. Amara doesn't have any tools to add crits to her attacks, unlike Flak and Zane, who have ways of doing that. But yeah, I feel like I kind of showcased that dots are a lot better than what people tend to believe. There's this odd stigma of dots not being good. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed it. It was amazing. I loved this run. Even though this is one of the more difficult builds to play that I've made, and this run looks a lot more scuffed than a lot of my other Maliwan Takedown runs. That was mostly because I'm not used to the playstyle yet. I just had a lot of fun playing the playstyle, and so I would do some stupid things like jump into the middle of a bridge and be like, "Ha, come get me," and then I get nuked by like the death spheres, which I couldn't really figure out a way of dealing with death spheres. I tried using a Quasar to pull them down, and that didn't work. And I tried just shooting them, and I wasn't able to get that much damage off because just the Hellfire DoT alone wasn't going to do much to a shielded and armored target. I could have pulled out some sort of weapon that would have done like shock or corrosive, I guess. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to use from those elements, so that was my difficulty there. So I just didn't have anything. I used the Guardian Angel for shock for a lot of things here, just simply because I was using it for other means later. And so it was a nice little help second wind or help deal with enemies that are shielded and armored and not HP driven. So I do plan on doing more Borderlands 2 content. The Road to Discovery episode is not a one-off thing. I would love to... I actually am planning on doing a Gage video next, which sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, it's Gage. But I want to try and clear Hatterax with non-OP10 gear, which sounds ridiculous. I mean... there were people who were trying to do that and struggling with other characters. And I want to be able to do it. It doesn't have to be, like... It doesn't have to be... It doesn't have to be, like, OP0. It's just non-OP10 to an extent. And I say it that way because the intent of the video is to help people who are running the hunt for BL2 how they could use Gage to kill Hatterax without relying on cheese or very specific weapons. I guess that's the more focus. OP10 can be all the weapons. It's just not using cheese or requiring very specific items, which is really difficult on Gage because Gage does require a lot of very specific items for a lot of her functions, which is why I initially was like, not doing OP10 instead of doing a non-specific item run. But I am curious if I can pull it off. And quest rewards should probably be allowed in that, just simply because getting a quest reward early, like a Lady Fist, getting the Lady Fist isn't that bad. Especially when you are that far into the hunt already that you're farming Hatterax for the Hatterax drops. So I'm thinking maybe doing a level 80 Lady Fist and running, if I'm doing other quest reward items, doing them at level 80, and then trying out some other like non-unique weapons or whatnot, just to see if I can do it without requiring specific gear. Because that definitely sounds like fun. I have a couple ideas on how to do it. I haven't gone through and tested anything yet because I just haven't had the time. But I definitely am interested in testing some of it. If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. I'm not all that good at BL2, so it's not really a downside for me not being able to actually put out a product like that, because I don't really know too much. But yeah, I finished up my required commentary, so I don't exactly know what I want to talk about now. I guess I can talk about one of my next projects. So the next build that I'm working on, I actually started working on this build before I started working. Well, I started working on the build that I'm currently talking about before I started working on this DoT build, and it is proven to be kind of annoying. The Phase Grasp Nova Annoyance, the one that you get on like a shield, and that when you Phase Grasp a target, you deal constant Novas, and it's based on your attuned element. I've been trying to find a way that I could run that anointment and get through one of these two. Get through a challenge build run. The issue that I have, well, that I'm running into, is, well, first, how the heck are you supposed to Phase Grasp and hit Wotan with the with the Novas? Yeah, that was a large chunk of damage. Almost one-tapped that phase with firing the Hellfire SMG on a not really gun-friendly build. Look at that. Unleash the Dragon. Just freaking slaughtered it. There was very little time in between fish slap throw and the death of the boss. And yeah, that's a takedown confirmed. That wasn't that bad of a run, even though it was kind of rough because I hadn't practiced with it enough. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and see y'all later. Bye-bye.